So I wanted to talk about this thing that I don't know if you guys have any questions, because there's something that I understood this month that I've been trying to understand for like 20 years. And I'm happy that JP, I'm happy you're here, because I think it's going to help you. I think it's going to help this situation in terms of understanding how reality moves from one level to the other. And I've been thinking about this for a really long time, and I'll kind of bring you through my thinking, because so it has to do with the idea of the left hand and the right hand. Okay, and so the idea of the left hand and the right hand is the idea of the left hand which brings in and the left hand which moves out, right? So the left hand pushes away and the right hand brings forward. So you can understand that you can understand it as the last judgment. So you see these images of the last judgment, Christ is pushing away and bringing towards him. But you can also understand it like there's a kind of alchemical version of this, which is the idea of coagula solve. So coagulating and dissolving, right? So you coagulate something and then you dissolve it. And so you can understand it as the moving into one and then the moving into many, right? John Vervaeke has been talking about this in his lectures, where it's like the problem of reality is the finding the balance, let's say, between noticing the unity of something and then the multiplicity. So you're constantly kind of moving your attention, or your consciousness is moving all the way, kind of finding this sweet spot between being able to see the unity and being able to see the multiplicity. And so it's like a game of coagula solve. It's a game of bringing forward and pushing away. So you see that. So once you start to understand that, you understand there's so many things that you can understand about how reality works, and also how society works, like a city or a nation. The idea that there are people that are being pushed away, the people that are being brought in, and there's four, right? Because you don't necessarily push away. It's not necessarily negative. Multiplicity is not necessarily negative. Unity is not necessarily positive. Although we tend to think of unity as positive and multiplicity as negative, it can also be there's both. So there's a negative unity, which is pride, and then there's a positive multiplicity, which is, let's say, be fruitful and multiply, right? And so you could say, though, that even the multiply is in the Bible, at least it's related to the fall, but it can be not necessarily negative. It can also become positive. Okay, so the thing that's been bothering me is for years and years and years. I'm going to show you what's been bothering me, and I'm recording this so people who want to watch this. How do I show my screen again? Okay, so this image right here. Okay, so this image, this is a 6th century image from Ravenna, and it's an image of the Last Judgment. So it's very simple, right? On the right hand of Christ. Can you see my cursor when I'm moving it? All right, okay. So on the right hand of Christ, you have the sheep, and then on the left hand of Christ, you have the goats. In the early images of Christ, what they would do with the with the hand, it had to do with, you can see it's like covered and uncovered, right? And I've talked about this before, in the sense that in the iconostasis, there's covered and uncovered too. So the Mother of God is covered, and then St. John the Foreigner is uncovered. Okay, but then what happens here is that, okay, so the thing is that when you see the symbolism flip in images, you think it's not that big of a deal, because you know sometimes you see Saint Paul on one side and Saint Peter on the other, and then sometimes it flips. Sometimes you see the Mother of God on one side and St. John the Baptist on the other, and then sometimes it flips, right? It's stabilized with time. After, in the early images it flips, and then it ends up stabilizing. But the reason why it flips is that the left hand and the right hand is always dependent on the viewer, right? And so if you're standing in front of me, if you're in front of me, my right hand corresponds to your left hand, and my left hand corresponds to your right hand. Okay, so it's like, so if we're shaking hands, we cross. There's an crossing over, there's an X, there's like a chiastic structure. When you engage with the other, there's a crossing over. Okay, that's the key. This is it. Like, you don't understand why it's so important yet, but the crossing over, I think this is the key. Okay, so I've been really bothered by this image, because so you have the sheep here, and then you have the goats here. And then you have this red angel, which will later, at least even if it's not that right now, later in tradition will become Saint Michael. And you have this blue angel, who it's not clear who it is now, but for sure later in tradition is going to become Saint Gabriel. Okay. Now, the imagery of these angels becomes typified, and Saint Michael is represented with a sword, and Saint Gabriel is represented with a lily. I picked up an image here where you can see here Gabriel has the lily, and here Saint Michael doesn't have a sword, but you've definitely seen, I think he has a lance here. So Saint Michael has a lance or a sword, and then Gabriel has lilies. Okay. So what bothers me, so yeah, here it's not flipped. Okay. Here it's like you have on the right side of Christ, you have the Mother of God, and then you have Gabriel. So you could call it the side of mercy. And then on the left hand, you have Saint John the Foreigner, and you have Michael, and that's the side of rigor, right? But on so many iconostases, this is a modern iconostasis. It's the same as in the 6th century. Here's Michael, here's Gabriel, here's the Mother of God, here's Saint John the Foreigner. And so I was like, what is going on? And I've always been bothered by this. And I kind of weirdly intuited it, but I didn't understand. And then there's another thing that happens, which has to do with this. And what I'm really starting to understand is this cross. There's like a flip. When you change perspectives, there's an inversion that happens. There's a flip. And so in Jewish symbolism, Michael is actually means, I think it means something like that, the one who is like God, and he's associated with the right hand of God. And and then Gabriel is associated with the left hand of God, and Gabriel, one of the readings of Gabriel means the rigor of God, literally means the rigor of God. It can mean the glory of God, but it can also mean the rigor. Geburah means rigor, or, like kind of harshness. So it's like, what is happening? And so what happens in Christianity is that the symbolism of the angels flips. So Michael, who is in Judaism considered to be the right hand of God and the side of mercy, becomes the red angel and like the side of rigor. And then Gabriel becomes the right hand angel and the side of mercy. Okay. Does that make sense? But now in this image, it has the cross in the image, where it's like, here's the red angel. And you could imagine it like this, like the red angel is judging these guys. And then here's the angel of mercy. And the angel of mercy is the cause of this side. So he's the cause of this side. He's the cause of this side. Okay. And I mean, what is it? It's this, right? It's this right here. It's this image. It's this black is the cause of this, and this white is the cause of this. This is the center of this circle that's turning, and here's the center of this circle that's turning, and it's turning. It's like a turning, and one leads the other. And it's like, man, it's like, this for 20 years, this has just been bothering the hell out of me. Okay. And so, okay, so then the other thing also that I've been thinking about in terms of this is the idea of the, I remember, Shane, I don't know if JP, you were here when I talked about this a while ago, is I said that the basic structure of reality, you can understand it as as a vertical line and a swirly line together, right? So it's like that's basically the structure of reality. Okay, so straight and curved, but then it's better to understand it like this, right? Like this. It's better to understand it like this, because there's the right side and the left side. And so the two sides come, then they cross, and they come back, and they cross, and they come back, and they cross. And so it's like, if you imagine that each place, can you see?
Yeah.
If you can imagine that each place where they touch the pole is like an ontological level. It's like a level on the ladder of being, okay? So each place where they touch the pole, that's like a point. It's like a center. It's a node. It's a place where things come together. It's an identity, right? And so, but then it's flipping from one level to the other. So the lower level. So when a lower level reaches the top level, it flips at that point. Okay, so that's what I think. I think that's the key, and I think that's why it's nearly impossible for people to see the continuity between ontological levels, is because it actually inverts. And because it inverts, then we're not able to see it. We want to see it as a continuity, but we don't want to see it as this flip that happens. Okay. So I'm talking about this very abstractly, but I'll give you an example, which is when the world changed. Let's say we find the biggest world change that we can think of, and it's the Copernican revolution. That's the biggest world change that we've had, right? And so when that world changed and there was a change of perspective, there was literally a change of perspective, what happened is a flip. There was a flip. Everything became the opposite. And so it's like the how can I say this? So that which was, let's say, the everything that, it's like my mind starts to fry when I think about this. It's like the idea of the heavens, for example, which was the place where all things come from, let's say, come down to the earth, then becomes like the ocean. Like it becomes this just huge potentiality in which everything is floating. It's flipped upside down. Right. It's hard to talk about this. It's like, because my mind starts to flip. Anyways, so this is the thing that I've been thinking about radically. So do you kind of follow what I'm saying until now?
Well, it's difficult.
That's what I was afraid of. I was like, they're not going to understand what I'm talking about.
I've been wrestling with something. Okay, so when you get into Trinitarian theology, it's more common, I guess, to associate potentiality with the Father, the ground of things, the one who creates things at their most fundamental level, and then to have the Son be the constraints on that potential, to be the order on that potential. But maybe that the whole of and with that idea, it would seem like maybe God the Father is creating some potential, and maybe the Son is constraining it in order to make, I don't know, the level of the fundamental particles, and then there's still potential coming up from there, and then the Son can constrain it into maybe cells, and then this still gives potential at the level of humans, and then Christ can still constrain that. So you would sort of have so it would always be that the Father is more on the side of just potential, and the Son always on the side of of order of logos, but instead maybe they're always sort of flipping sides when they're going up the hierarchy. I don't know if that makes sense. It's sort of an image I had when you said
when
what
I said
you're doing.
that. I mean, maybe, I don't know. Like I said, this is right now, it's like raw intuition for me. This is all raw intuition. So this is also something related to this that I finally kind of understood, is that one of the problems, every time I talk about the right and the left hand, there's always a problem, because when you think of the left, right, and left hand in terms of the last judgment, you think right hand is the hand of mercy and the left hand is the hand of judgment. Okay. So, but when I use, let's say, St. Maximus's language about the right hand sins and the left hand sins, when I say a right hand sin, I say it's actually pride, and a left hand sin is dissolution. Okay. So the left hand sins is the breaking apart, let's say, the things falling apart, and the right hand sin is like holding together. Okay. But then I just told you that the right hand is mercy. Mercy is letting go. That's what mercy is. Mercy is not holding to account, right? And rigor is exactly that. It's like holding to the law. But when I say if I say something like right hand is mercy and left hand is rigor, everybody understands it. But then and if I say something like the right hand is pride, or is, it's like bringing towards you, and I say the left hand is moving away from you and it's dissolution, everybody understands that as well. And so, but this is the thing, this is the flip right there. That's the flip. It's the flip. So the way that Could you
repeat those two? I'm not sure I got the flip exactly.
Okay, so look, so this is what I was going to explain. I was going to re-explain. So you have, let's think about it this way, right? I'm going to think about it this way. So you have, I'm going to write it down here. So it's hard to draw it on a diagram because it actually flips. But let's say I draw it this way. I can do it this way. I could do it differently. Okay. So you have the right hand above, and then you have the left hand above, and you have the right hand below and the left hand below. Let's say the right hand above, left hand, let's say the right foot and the left foot. Let's say it that way, let's say. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
By the way, now it makes total sense too, why it flips in the brain. Like, it's like from the right hand side, the right brain and the left brain is like an inverted symbolism. It flips into the world. Like, so this part controls that part and this part controls that part.
Yep.
Anyways, so you have this cross. And so, so let's say I have the right hand. This is mercy. Let me write it down. Okay. Let's say, my handwriting is horrible. I'm sure none of you ever seen my handwriting before. All right, so so you have the right hand above, right, and the right below. So the right hand above is mercy, and then the left hand above is rigor. But then the right below becomes the law, becomes the coagulation of logos, you could say, something like that. And then the left hand, the left foot, the left hand below becomes dissolution. Okay. So the way that I understand it, you can understand it in two ways. You can understand it like, you can understand it like this causes this. Okay. So this above, mercy above, letting go above, is a way, letting go above is the way to bring towards you, right? Because if let's say you owe me something, and then I don't hold you accountable for it. I let it go. Then it brings you towards me. Okay. And so it's an action. It's the active part. Okay. And and on the other side, if I've got the left hand and I'm rigorous towards you, right? Then I hold to the law, the action. It's going to push you away. Right? Does that make sense? So it's like, if I hold you accountable, I'm actually going to push you away from me because you owe me this. And so until you pay me, then you can't be with me. You're not in communion with me. Right? That makes sense? All right. So now that's the active. So it's all active. This is how I act. And then the bottom one is all passive. It's the law, it's the state, right? So the state of solidity down below looks like rigor, because it's the law. It's like holding, it's the wall of the city. It's even the sword, even, right? In a certain manner, right? Because it's like, it's holding together down below. And then the other side, it's the passive side. It's the state of dissolution. It's the things that are broken apart, or it's the things that break apart, but it's not active. It's like, it's the result of. And so that's it. That's the flip. That's the flip. So it's active above, passive below. And then it flips when you move from one to the other. And it's like, to me, it's like, I still have to think about it, because there's no way I'm making a video about something like this for now, because like, even I'm telling you guys, and I'm seeing you're all like, okay, it kind of makes sense, but it doesn't totally make sense. But what happens is that if you understand it as active and passive, there's a whole, it makes sense that one is above and one is below. Like, one is masculine and is active, one is passive and is feminine, you would say. But yeah, and then there's the active right hand, which is the letting go. And then there's an active left hand, which is a pushing away or holding away. And then below it flips. Does that make sense? Sort of?
Yeah. Yeah, it's starting to make more sense. And what would be at the center? Would it still be Christ?
I mean, that would be Christ. Christ would be at the center. I mean, that would be the idea. Would be that Christ is at the center, and in a way, it would be like the person is at the center too. And so see it this way. It's like, if I have, okay, see it this way in terms of active and passive. It's like, you do something against me. Then I extend my right hand. I give you mercy. Okay. Now I do something bad, and then I have mercy on myself. Then I just keep doing the bad thing. Right? It becomes the dissolution, the passive letting go across from me as an active thing, and letting go as a passive thing in terms of it flips, and you can do the same thing. You can do the same thing.
You mean that when you're letting go in yourself, that is the passive part?
In the sense that if I'm eating a chocolate bar and I'm like, it's not a big deal, I'm just gonna eat another chocolate bar. Yeah, it doesn't matter. I'm gonna eat another chocolate bar, right? But if I act to you and I forgive you, let's say, then I bring you towards me. Whereas if I do it passively, then I fragment. And so if you take the other side and I say, like, let's say you have you're doing something against me, and then I'm like, no, like, I'm not accepting this. I'm not going to accept this. And I'm not, communion is broken. I'm applying the law here. The rule says don't this, and the rule says this, and that's it. You're cut off, right? But if I do it to myself, then I'm actually holding myself together. Like if I'm strict on my own behavior and I'm strict on myself, then I'm actually going to cohere, right? And so it's this flip. It's like, so it's active towards, and then you can see it. So you can see it as you and me facing each other, but I think that you can see it also as the levels. I think that I need to find more examples, but I think that it happens at the levels. And I think that that's why. So it's like, so in order for a way to see it, it's like, okay, so a way to see it would be like this. Now, if I eat an apple, right, I dissolve it in order for me to become more. So the apple for me is coagula, but for the apple, it's solve, right? Does that make sense? It's like, so it's flipping. So if I take an ontological reality below me, the way that I interact with it, it flips it so that what breaks me dissolves what's below me. And then you could say that if I dissolve, right, then it's an affirmation of my particles. It's like when you dissolve, when you decompose, the different particles, they let's say they find their independence. They find their they're not attached to me anymore. They have their own, they have a stronger identity, you would say. They manifest each other. And so let's say you have a country, and then there's a group that wants its identity, to be recognized, right? It will dissolve. It has to act in a manner to dissolve the higher identity in order to be able to declare its identity in a stronger way. And then the other way is also real. It's like if you want to be an American at some point, you can't just be some guy from Kentucky. That has a part of your Kentuckiness has to be somewhat dissolved into the higher identity, or else you're not going to be part of it, right? And so it's like this play between coagula sol that happens. That's always it's always happening, obviously, but in order for but it's the opposite. It flips. It's not just that's the hardest thing to think of, because the way that I explain it, the way that I've been explaining it for years, and I think it's still fine to explain it that way, is to say, like, if we commune, so if the multiplicity communes together, then it will manifest the higher identity by coming together, right? So if you love each other, then, if the 2 or 3 of you are together in my name, then it's like Christ manifests himself, okay? But I didn't see it the other way around, which is when you commune, there is an aspect that you are also giving up some of your independence. Inevitably, you have to give up some of your idiosyncrasies. And so then in the liturgy, that's why we say, like, I don't know in the Catholic liturgy, but in the Orthodox liturgy, we say, as we're coming closer to communion, there's this where it says, lay aside all earthly cares. And then we say, we raise up our hearts. We raise our hearts up to the Lord. It's like, so you let go of your idiosyncrasies and you raise your heart, your center up together towards this higher thing. And so it's like, whoa, right? But you have to dissolve. So then there's so many things that now start to understand. So when you say, like, we have to die to ourselves, all this stuff which we just say and nobody understands, or that we just say morally, but we don't understand what it means metaphysically. But it's like, you have to die to yourself in order to become the body of Christ. That's just inevitable, And so, anyways, so I hope this is making sense, because for me, it's like it really has been like a massive complexification of my understanding of how these things work. And I think that in terms of I think that someone would have to do the work to think about it, but I think that even in terms of understanding the passage between I'm pretty sure that even scientifically, if you try to understand the let's say the passage between different ontological levels of manifestation, I think that you could probably come to that conclusion, but I don't know, because I'm not a scientist. I don't think about that stuff. I think about it more in terms of phenomenon, but for sure it's really helping me to see. And so now, like that image of the caduceus, the image of the two serpents, I mean, makes way more sense. It just makes way more sense. And I've always been bothered by that image too. Just like that image of the angel and the blue angel, the red angel, and the judgment and the mercy. And it's like, well, why is that? I remember even in my comic book, God's Dog, I wanted to show that image of the last judgment. But then I was like, yeah, but the angel, red angel, should be on the left hand and the right angel should be on the right hand. Like, they made a mistake. And they didn't make a mistake. Luckily, luckily I say that, but then I'm like, no, you need to trust the ancients more than you do. Anyway, so I don't think they made a mistake anymore.
To try to frame it with language I know, going from one element to the other, is, if you look at it from the bottom, it looks like emergence. It looks like two entities to combine into a higher one. They need to die to themselves. They need to they need to dissolve. No, do I want to say dissolve? I don't know.
They don't. Yeah, it's like, but that's the thing, is that they never totally dissolve. And I think that that's love. And I think that love is the balance between the two. I think that love is, and that's why Christ is kind of in the middle. And you would say that he has both the right hand and the left hand. That love is actually the balance between, because if we completely dissolve into the one, then it doesn't work. You also need to, there also has to maintain, the multiplicity has to be maintained, but some of it has to be sacrificed in order for the one to appear. And so that's the key. And I think that makes sense in terms of is kind of breathing in and breathing out, this optimal grip, or whatever the words that John uses,
so you both need, let's say, if you're two persons trying to come into one, you need to push out what doesn't quite fit, and you need to take in what does.
Yeah.
If you both do this, then you can combine into a higher entity. And so from the lower level, that looks like, I'm trying to fit the active and passive levels you talked about. So what I will actively do to combine with someone else is, I need to both push out what doesn't fit. I need to take in what fits. So that's for the active part, for two people to combine and emerge into something greater. From the higher level, what that higher entity, at this level, I would need to look at what this and this higher entity does passively, if it.
But the thing is that the higher entity is always active. The higher entity, when you have a hierarchy, the higher entity is active and the lower entity is passive. So that's just kind of an inevitable thing that happens.
Okay. Yeah. Okay. Yeah, I see that one. But could you explain maybe the link with the active and passive levels? So so because the idea from what I gathered was that when let's say, when is it that when two people are trying to combine together, then they're actively, let's say, pushing and pulling, and then when that works, they become passive under the higher principle.
Yeah, so I think that's the thing, is I think the that's what I'm wondering. Like, I'm wondering about, because I see it very clearly in terms of the hierarchy. That's a lot easier. Now, I can see it. I can see it between you and I. And so it's like, if I wanted to, be in communion with you, then I would have to find a balance between letting you, let's say, letting you come into my space, but then not you completely coming into my space, like not completely devouring me, not swallowing me up, right? And so I have to push you away, and I have to bring you forward. Like, I can see it that way, but I'm not sure if I see it as I don't see it as much as the reciprocity. Like, how does the reciprocity work? Man, so I have to think about it. I'm not gonna come with a solution right now. That's for sure. But that's something I need to think about. That's something you need to think about. It's like, so anyways, I'm happy that it feels like the bomb that I wanted it to feel, at least on, I don't, do you kind of see what I'm talking about, Shane? Or are you like, okay, these guys, I don't know what they're talking about?
Yeah, I mean, I think I see some elements of it, but there's a part where you talk about I understand the dissolution and coagula between the higher and the lower. Like, that makes sense to me. But then you say there's something about, you keep on talking about the flip as if there's something more there, but I can't quite grasp it. And so I'm wondering, like, what is this answer for you? What is this sort of illuminating? Like, maybe that's a way to
right.
get it.
So well, there's a few things. One of the things it answers is some simple historical questions, which is, how did Judaism become Christianity, and why did Rome? It's like, how did Judaism become Christianity? Then how did Rome become Christian? It's like moving from the slave to the empire, moving from the city to the nomad to the city dweller, like, from the pastoral to the agriculturist. It's like, there's this, when the world changes, it actually looks like an inversion. It looks like this flip. And so that I think it's helping me already understand this change, like why things change the way they do. And St. Paul talks about this somewhat. He talks about the idea that the Jews have been put under rigor and you have been put under mercy, but like maybe one day it's going to flip again. Like this idea of when he says he has you are the tree, and then Christ is the tree, and then you are the branch. You've been grafted on. The Jews have been cut off, right? It's all this image of coagula solve. And so you've been grafted on. The Jews have been cut off, and then he says, but don't have pride. He says, don't have pride, because if you have pride, who's to say one day you will not be cut off again, and they won't be grafted back on? And then he says the craziest thing ever, and that's where he says it. That's where he says what David Bentley Hart's been saying. That's where he says, so that all will be saved, right? And so that's, if you want to help me to understand what it's going to solve for me, I think it's going to solve pretty much everything. It's like, if I can understand that text in St. Paul about the tree and the branch and the cutting off and the putting back and the pride and then how when it flips and it flips again, the double inversion, then all are saved. Like, if you can help me, if I can understand that, it's like, I don't think there's much left to understand in the world. Anyways, so that's what I'm thinking of. So now I need to like go back in scripture and find the places where kind of St. Paul talks about that stuff. Like, I know there's a few places, but I just need to identify them. Sometimes it's not obvious. Like, you wouldn't have thought that thing about the branch, the tree and the branch was that, but it's obviously, you can see that it's that, especially when he says you've been grafted on, and then he says don't boast, like don't have pride. And so it's like, he's telling you, this is it. Like, I'm talking about the structure. Anyways. And because there's another place where this is going on. So when Jacob has his sons blessed. You know the story, right? So when when Joseph has his sons blessed by Jacob, he brings his sons to Jacob, and then Jacob has the right. He has the eldest on his right hand and the youngest on his left hand, and then he crosses his hands over and he changes the blessing. And it's like that story has always just bothered, and not just bothered, but just been like this, like nail scratching at the back of my mind. Like, there's something there, my friend. You don't understand it. There's something really important in that. It's like from a change of generation, there's this weird flip that happens. But I still don't understand it. I'm just telling you, but I know that's what it's about now. At least I know that's what it's about, but I don't totally understand why that has to happen. Yeah, there's a bunch of places in the Bible where this happens, but yeah, just have to think about it more. Anyway, so now you're seeing me a bit drunk on symbolism, which is okay. It's not a public discussion. Oh man.
Could you show the small picture you made?
Oh, this one?
Yeah.
This one here?
One, yeah. Okay.
So the thing is that you could represent it this way, but you could also represent it the other way. Like you could have, so instead of me, I could do it this way, right? So I think you could represent it this way. Right? Because that's the change of perspective also. Because that's what, if you're so I think it's fine to represent it this way if we kind of understand what we're talking about. But I think that you could also represent it this way, because it's like I'm standing in front of you, and then when we shake hands, we're doing exactly that. We're crossing over, you know. And so yeah, and I'm still gonna have to think about it. I think I'm gonna try to find some example. Like crossing over the idea of shaking hands is great because it really is this crossing over. I'll try to find other places, like when you fight too. So like fighting, for example. So you have a sword and you have a shield, right? And so you protect yourself. So you have one side which is to, like, a wall to protect yourself, and you have one side which is to attack. Okay. So it's like, so you attack with one hand and you protect yourself with the other. But then again, when you're facing someone, then it's flipped, which is why when someone's a left-handed person, they have a massive advantage. It's like if you're fencing, for example, a left-handed fencer has massive advantage because he's a weirdo and he doesn't fit the normal idea of, like, if I'm standing in front of you and I have my sword, we're crossed over, and then if I try to hit your chest, then you just move your hand like this and you block me. But if it's standing across from each other and like that, I have to go like this to hit you. I have to do these weird things in order to get you because it's flipped. It's weird. And so I think so you get that again, like, so protection and fighting. If I'm standing across from someone, then those are inverted. And you have to protect yourself from my blow. So if I hit you, you have to stop it on the side that I hit you. And if you hit me, I have to stop it on the side that you hit me. Right? And so it's like, if I try to break you apart, if you don't want it to happen, you have to put a wall to stop me. And then the other way is the same. It's like, so I think that fighting could be a great way to understand it. Someone who knows martial arts, of understanding the difference between hitting and blocking, and then try to kind of understand that in terms of, like, what is hitting and what is blocking, and then how does that relate to each other? Yeah, I think for sure that would be a good case study to think about it.
And maybe to go from one level to the other when, let's say, two agents are on the top row when they're actively maybe attacking and blocking, when they're actively pulling and pushing. Then as they do this, then the stable parts start to emerge. There start to be patterned laws, and also the other side. I don't remember what there was law on the right and
or dissolution or
dissolution.
Yeah, I mean it could be multiplicity. It wouldn't have to be dissolution.
Yeah.
Dissolution is just negative.
Okay.
Or multiplication, something like that.
Because this may be how when those two agents are actively pushing and pulling, that's how sort of the higher level starts to deposit, starts to build up of an interplay between law and the solution. Because that seems definitely like a higher level thing, the law and still working through this.
Yeah, we're not gonna figure it out like right here. You need to think about it. I'm gonna keep thinking about it for sure. For sure. I don't know. I think I've got something for sure. Yeah. And I'm probably going to talk to Mathieu about it too, if I get a chance to talk to him, because I think that because we've been talking about this for a really long time, just even that problem, both of us have been really talking about it. He might understand it by now already. I don't know, but I feel like I really intuitively grasp it. Sometimes you can kind of, it's like I can explain it to you.
Yeah, maybe. Yeah, there's definitely something that works there. Maybe I just keep repeating the same things, but I think it's helping me. I imagine in a body you have, let's say, two cells where or two types of cells where one sort of cell is sort of excreting some chemical which the other cell can take in order to build itself up, and that cell will itself excrete some chemicals which the other cell can take in. So you have that interplay between those two cells where what one gives, the other one receives. And they're also blocking and so on. And this interaction between those two allows them to, and this is just constant flips, which they do with one another. What one gives, the other receives, and so on. And with that constant flips, there can emerge something higher, namely, a whole ecosystem of different cells, which will make up, let's say, an organ or an organism.
Well, yeah, that makes sense because so it makes sense because the way that I've explained it is always talking about communion. So it's like if we come together, then that's how the higher thing appears. But it's actually not true. It's not totally true. It's mostly that, but you also need for the multiplicity, and you also need to prevent total fusion, right? In order for a complex system to appear. Right. So it's like if I want like something like life, then they can't just all fuse into a blob of the same thing. Like it's like they can't just fuse into one material, let's say, right? Because then it won't be a complex system. It'll just be water. It'll just be whatever. Some
you can't just give everything or take everything. You'll just dissolve.
Right. So even for the higher entity to appear, a complex entity, there has to be a push and pull between the different entities. You're totally right. It makes total sense. So I've been always talking about
you need a constant flip.
Exactly. Like this, you need to have this find the balance between how we exist together and how we exist separately in order for the higher thing to manifest itself. And so ultimately then really that's love. Because I say things like that. Like I say love is the balance between unity and multiplicity. But then when I talk about how things appear, I always talk about communion in the sense of coming together, having one common purpose, having one common thing. But for sure, it's like when I say it, I'm like, yeah, it's obvious, but I don't tend to emphasize that. I don't tend to emphasize the balance between that you need to find a balance between one and many in order for the one above to appear, right? You need to find a balance between your identity and the others for the higher thing to. So yeah, all right, man.
Instead of love, could meaning also be at the intersection?
Yeah, I mean, I think meaning is also meaning is also good, because meaning is also, it has to also be a account for the whole and account for the parts. Like, it's also, meaning also tends to do that,
Yeah.
right? It tends to because if it doesn't account for the parts, then is like a deincarnation that happens, and you don't, and it's like it doesn't make sense. It's like listening to
A further question I have is, I think what we've said gives an idea of how this happens sort of bottom up, when you have different agents engaging in this constant flip, then something higher can emerge. And I'm curious to see how this happened top down as well.
Well, I think top down, you have to understand it as eating, like, to a certain extent, or like the relationship between
So imposing a law and also
receiving potential.
dissolving.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I think
Right. So you dissolve the lower entities into potential for you, on which you lay down order.
Exactly. That's right.
Yeah.
Exactly. That's what it is. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. So you have this constant flip between, the lower level entities are engaging in that flip between, giving and taking. And from this, the higher entity can emerge. And what that one does is to dissolve the lower entities into potential, on which it can then lay down order. So you have that constant back and forth between the entities at the lower level, and from those entities to the higher level entity.
Yeah. Yeah. That's what it is. Yeah. It makes that's a great way to describe it. I'm happy we're recording this, because I'm definitely going to listen to what you just said again. Oh man. All right. Okay. So I think enough of that. My brain is about fried on that subject.